This week during Guided, we're going to be talking about symbolism. A symbol is a mark, sign, or word that indicates, signifies, or is understood as representing an idea, object, or relationship. Symbols allow people to go beyond what is known or seen by creating linkages between otherwise very different concepts and experiences. What does that mean? Well, symbolism was actually created back during the Industrial Age when life was pretty boring, dull, monotonous, maybe even a little bit exhausting or dangerous. Similar to kind of what we have now. Think of symbolism as kind of like a meme where you take kind of a dark subject and you put a little light into it. So a symbol stands for something else. Colors can have symbolism. The yin and the yang kind of symbolizes the balance between all things. And so today, that's what we're going to be looking at. In our reading passage today, we're going to look for light and we're going to look for dark. So I'm going to kind of start here. Kino was hurrying toward the house. He felt a surge of exhilaration. Exhilaration generally is kind of like a positive, I wanted to highlight, a positive connotation. Now he was not confused. There was only one thing to do, and Kino went first to the great pearl in his shirt. But if I see a knife here, that's kind of negative, and then the knife hanging underneath his shirt. He saw a little glow, so I'm actually kind of looking for light type words ahead of him. And then without interval, a tall flame leaped up into the dark. So a lot of times when we have things like light, okay, what that actually represents is light kind of is equal to truth. Okay, so you kind of have like the truth coming up into the dark. With a crackling roar. So I want you to think of like this truth as roaring and really bringing out what's going to be happening now. And a tall edifice of fire lighted the pathway. Kino broke into a run. It was his brush house. He knew that these houses could burn down in a few minutes. And he ran, a scuttling figure toward him, Juana, with Coyotito in her arms, and Kino's shoulder blanket clutched in her hand. The baby moaned with fright. So again, whenever I'm reading, I'm looking for like these negative connotation words. And Juana's eyes were terrified. Kino could see the house was gone. That's definitely negative. And he did not question Juana. He knew, but she said it was torn up. The floor was dug, and even the baby's box was turned out. I looked. They put the fire to the outside. So basically now, the truth is that right now there is a fire burning, and kind of some of the truth that is coming out into the light from the darkness is that this pearl is still kind of bringing fright and terror into their lives. The fierce light of the burning house lighted Kino's face strongly. Who? He demanded. I don't know, she said. The dark ones. The neighbors were tumbling from their houses now, and they watched the falling sparks and stamped them to save their own houses. That's pretty important, right? Suddenly, Kino was afraid. Here is some truth that's also coming out into the light. The light, here we go. The truth made him afraid. How many times have you been afraid to tell someone truth because you're afraid that they wouldn't like your truth, or they might be hurt by the truth. He remembered the man laying dead in the brush beside the path. Okay, so here's some more truth that's coming out into the light. When a man had come to try to steal the pearl from Kino, some truth that's popping up is that Kino himself has murder within his heart. And not even within his heart anymore. He's actually capable of it. And he took Juana by the arm and drew her into the shadow of the house. So he's drawing her into the darkness. A lot of times we want to hide these bad things about ourselves, and so we put them in the dark, we put them in the closet, and we don't talk about them. So he hides this information that he can be a killer away from the light, away from the truth, because light, the truth, is actually a danger to him. For a moment he considered, and then he worked among the shadows. So again, we kind of work our own truth into the shadows, especially if we're doing something we know we shouldn't be doing. We hide it, right? Until he came to the house of Juan Thomas, his brother. And he slipped into the doorway and drew Juana after him. Outside he could hear the squeal of children and the shouts of neighbors, for his friends thought he might be inside the burning house. The house of Juan Thomas was almost exactly like Kino's house. Nearly all the brush houses were alike, and all leaked light and air, so that Juana and Kino, sitting in the corner of the brother's house, could see the leaping flames through the wall. They saw flames tall and furious. They saw the roof fall and watched the fire die down as quickly as a twig fire dies. They heard the cries and warnings of their friends and the shrill keening cry of Apollonia, wife of Juan Thomas. She, being the nearest woman relative, raised a formal lament for the dead of the family. Apollonia realized that she wasn't wearing her second-best shawl, and she rushed to her house to get her fine new one. She was rummaging in a box by the wall when Kino's voice said, "Apollonia, don't cry. We are not hurt." So they were kind of worried that this truth might even end up killing the family members. "How do you come here?" she demanded. "Do not question," he said. "Go now on Thomas and bring him here and tell no one else. This is important to us, Apollonia." She paused, her hands helpless in front of her. "Yes, my brother-in-law," she said. In a few moments, Juan Thomas came back with her. He lit a candle and came to them where they crouched in the corner, and he said, "Apollonia, see to the door. Do not let anybody enter." He was older, Juan Thomas, and he assumed the authority. "Now, my brother," he said. And then Kino says he was attacked in the dark. That's like where the evil is, right? And in the fight, so now the truth is coming out. "I've killed a man." "Who?" asked Juan Thomas quickly. "I do not know. It is all darkness and the shape of darkness." So when an author repeats something, he's really kind of saying the importance of maybe how Kino now feels in his own heart. And Juan Thomas starts saying, it is the pearl that is causing all this darkness. There is a devil in this pearl. You should have sold it and passed on the devil. Perhaps you can still sell it and buy peace for yourself. So everyone, so far there's two people, Juana and his brother, are telling him to sell this pearl. "Oh, my brother, an insult has been put on me that is deeper than my life. For on the beach my canoe is broken, my house is burned, and a brush and the dead man lies. Every escape is cut off. You must hide us." So this is kind of interesting. There's all of this bad stuff, almost like a curse is happening to Kino and his family now that he found this pearl. But instead of actually taking the advice of his wife and his brother, he wants to continue to hide from the truth that this pearl is more evil than it is good. And Kino, looking closely, saw deep worry come into his brother's eyes, and he forestalled him in a possible refusal. So again, Kino is still really tenacious. He's really holding on to that this pearl, this money, can save his family, even though all this evil has occurred. Not for long, he said. Only until a day has passed and the new night has come, then we will go. So because they are family, sometimes our family will hide the truth for us for a while. And then he says, I do not want to bring danger to you, which is positive, right? I know I'm like a leprosy. If you look that up, leprosy is a sickness. I will go tonight and then you will be safe. So now even Kino knows that this darkness that is inside of him could be contagious. And people want to protect us, right? Especially if they're family members. I will protect you, said Juan Thomas. Apollonia, close up the door. Do not even whisper that Kino is here. They sat silently all day in the darkness of the house, and they could hear the neighbors speaking to them through the walls of the house, and they could watch their neighbors raking through the ashes to find bones. So they're afraid. So I guess the neighbors think that Kino and his wife and the baby might have died in the fire. Crouching in the house of Juan Thomas, they heard the shock go into their neighbors' minds at the news of the broken boat. Juan Thomas went out among the neighbors to divert their suspicions, and he gave them theories and ideas of what had happened to Kino and Juana and to the baby. Now, why do you think he would have done this? Kind of led them to believe that maybe Kino, Juana, and the baby had died in the fire. Probably, again, going back up to this text, I will protect you. So if they think that something happened to Kino, Juana, and the baby, they're going to stop coming to attack them, right? The one, he said, I think they've gone south along the coast to escape the evil that was on them. And another, Kino would never leave the sea. Perhaps he found another boat, he said. Apollonia is ill with grief. And in that day, the wind rose up to beat the gulf and tore the kelps and the weeds that lined the shore. So now we're having some more kind of like symbolism here, or we have personification. They're making the wind sound like a person. The wind cried through the brush houses, and no boat was safe on the water. Then Juan Thomas told among the neighbors, Kino is gone. If he went to the sea, he is drowned by now. So again, he's trying to convince the neighbors that Kino has passed. And after each trip among the neighbors, Juan Thomas came back with something borrowed. He brought a little woven straw bag of red beans, a gourd full of rice. He borrowed a cup of dried peppers and a block of salt. And he brought in a long working knife, 18 inches long and heavy as a small axe, a tool and a weapon. Now, pay attention to that. Why is Kino going to keep needing a weapon if all of his neighbors think that he's passed away? And when Kino saw this knife, knives can kill again, right? His eyes lit up, and he fondled the blade, and his thumb tested the edge. So again, this is really kind of exaggerating or kind of showing who Kino has become ever since this pearl has entered his life. And again, we have more personification where almost like nature is screaming and crying over what has happened. So some people think that nature is like Mother Earth. And so she's kind of screaming and crying over maybe what has happened to her child, Kino. Over the gulf and turned water white, and the mangroves plunged like frightened cattle, and the fine sandy dust rose from the land and hung in a stifling cloud over the sea. Stifling, that's not good. Suffocating. The wind drove off the clouds and skimmed the sky clean and drifted the sand of the country like snow. Then Juan Thomas, when evening approached, talked along with his brother. Where will you go? Here's another symbolism. So if you kind of open this up, we're going to see a repeated word, north. So when you see a repeated word, that also is interesting. So if you type up symbolism north, it'll say we orient ourselves by facing north, knowing where you're going, having a plan. I thought it was also kind of like, oh, look at this. North is the place of the living coming, is the place the living come from and the dead return to. So that's kind of interesting. So just having a plan. And then this is interesting. It says where the dead return to. Kino has kind of become almost like dead in his soul. So he needs to kind of go north to try to get back to where he can feel he can live again. Avoid the shore, said Juan Thomas. They are making a party to search the shore. The men in the city will look for you. Do you still have the pearl? I have it, said Kino, and I will keep it. I might have given it as a gift, but now it's my misfortune and my life, and I will keep it. So even though it is his misfortune, he's also saying it's his life, and he's still going to hold on to it. So really, this pearl is really bringing out his greed, and it's bringing out this hard and cruel and bitter aspect of himself. Coyotito whimpered, and Juana muttered magics over them to make him silent. So remember, if Kino is like the negative person here, Juana is still trying to hold the peace, trying to hold that song of the family over them so that they don't break apart. The wind is good, said Juan Thomas. There will be no tracks. They left quietly in the dark. So again, the dark kind of represents the shadows, those things that we don't talk about. The family stood formally in the house of Juan Thomas. Juana carried Coyotito on her back and covered and held her by the head shawl, and the baby slept, cheek turned sideways against her shoulder. Here we have kind of like this really peaceful moment here among a chaotic moment where the baby's asleep against the mother's shoulder. And so it's kind of really showing that in the beginning of the story, the song of the family is what was really the most important. But now this song of what could be is kind of taking over Kino's mind. And even though it has been a misfortune, and even though it's been hard, cruel, and bitter, it's almost becoming more important than the song of the family. The head shawl covered the baby. So again, kind of like a mother's love can like cover you and protect you. And one end of it came across Juana's nose to protect her from the evil of the night air. You know, this really reminds me of Harry Potter when his mother's love kind of saved him as well. Juan Thomas embraced his brother in double embrace and kissed him upon both cheeks. Go with God, he said, and it was like a death. You will not give up the pearl. So again, he's saying, return to God, return to love, return to the song of your family. Because if you don't, it is going to be like a death, a simile, right? And he's asking him, it's always a choice if we're going to hide in the shadows or if we're going to come out into the light. You will not give up the pearl. And Kino's still holding fast. He said, the pearl has become my soul. If I give it up, I shall lose my soul. This is the irony here. Wouldn't you say that he's already lost his soul because he's already become hard and bitter? So today I was just going to have you listen to the shared, learning about what symbolism is, and then later this week it is going to be your turn. I will also have open as many Google Meets as possible if you're still struggling with this concept. Have a great day.